like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Submit, honey. Submit. And thankfully my wife's not this, so I'm good. Submit. And that's the point, is we want to put these rules on everyone else without realizing what they're really saying. What I love is, as you know, I love going to the original language, and this word here used in Greek is hypotasso, which means live under God's direction. Okay, so let me ask you, when man and woman were created to live as one, what was God's direction? It's not the submit word, ladies. It's living your marriage under God's direction. And how did He direct you? If I were to take you back to the book of Genesis, remember Adam was there in the garden all alone, and of course men think we know what we're doing all the time, but we need what? Help. Yeah. We need a helper. We need the perfect helper. And that's why you were created. That's the whole point of marriage, is in your marriage, you were created, ladies, to be the perfect helper for your husband. That's what that word submit truly means. To live under that direction of God that He gave you to be the perfect helper. And to be honest, that's where we've lost sight. In that first part, 50 years ago, everything changed in this country. Prior to World War II, the ladies, as you would think, were in the kitchen. And that all changed because the men went to war and there was no one there to build the weapons, the airplanes, the things for the war so we could win the war. And they went into the factories. And then when they got done, they felt, as that word, liberated. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with ladies working, but what we forgot is why we're married. And I hate to say it, that's why 50% of all marriages in the last 5 years has ended in divorce. Divorce, I'll say it is a horrible thing, and many of you in this room may be living in that divorce situation. And that's partly because we forget, both of us, men and women, to do what God's assigned us to do. Wives, submit to your husbands. Live as that perfect helper. And men, you know what we forgot to do, and myself included, is we forgot to love our wives. And I'm not talking in a physical sense. I'm talking truly love our wives like Christ loved the church. When we forget these two things, we go down that vicious circle. Men, when you and I, myself definitely included, forget to love our wives, things don't work well in the house, do they? They don't work well in the house because we're not doing what God called us to do, to love our wives. It's real hard to submit to a husband that isn't living like he loves you. See, it hits us all. These words are so hard, they're so harsh, but they're so true. That's what God's calling to us, and I don't have a problem saying these words because these are God's. And I know I'm failing. And that's the problem, is we all know that we're not doing this perfectly. If I love my wife like Christ loved the church, I'd be willing to die for her. Willing to do anything in the world for her. It's a pretty big task to live at that level. To live willing to die for your spouse. See, it never says, ladies, love your husbands. And it, maybe because it's so obvious, you ladies already know that. It says, women, submit to your husbands, and husbands, love your wives. See, that's what marriage is all about. We forget we were given that instruction manual. We forget it's all right here. To live like Christ loved the church. And what does that mean then? You know, your marriage is not always going to be perfect. No matter how much you think I'm going to live just like it says, there's going to be failures. There's going to be moments where each of you fail in that. And you know what God calls us to do, just like He calls the church, is simply say, you're sorry. Simply ask for forgiveness. Truly with your heart say, honey, I'm sorry I failed. Please forgive me. And ladies, then your response is always, I forgive you. See, that fixes it all. You may not think so, but it does. If you truly with your hearts tell your spouse, I'm sorry I failed here to do what I'm supposed to do, will you forgive me? And if their spouse loves you as much as he loves the church, he'll say, yes, honey, I forgive you. And that's the point of this text. To live our lives in Him. To live our lives like He the church, because the church is his bride. This building, all of us are his bride. Now, guys, I know we don't like to hear that we're Christ's bride, but that's referring to the church. Because Jesus was so willing to live his life and die for us. That's the greatest love. One willing to die for another. This week, when you have those moments in your marriage and you don't know where to turn or what to say or what to do, think about Christ's actions and how he loves his bride. Leave here. Forgive one another. Submit to one another. And love like Christ loves you. Amen. And may the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, be with you in hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Please stand as we continue with the Nicene Creed.